Have you ever asked yourself how a final degree paper is assessed? We asked 3 professors 3 questions.
Ja, ich schaue sie mir erstmal so an, bin freudig angetan, dass ich
Well, first of all, I take a look at the paper, and I'm pleased if I can see that the candidate has made an effort. I look at the title page, check that there's a synopsis that gives me an overview, and then I look at the list of contents. That shows how structured the whole thing is. And then I'm curious about the contents themselves. I take a first glance at the contents by flipping through the pages to see how clear everything is, how the quotation references have been organized, perhaps as footnotes. And then I'm keen to take a look at the final chapter of the paper, because that shows the conclusion and a critical perspective. And then, of course, there's the quality of the bibliography. And all of that is important before I start to look in detail at each individual line of the paper.
Ja, zunächst verschaffe ich mir einen Überblick.
Well, first, I need an overview of the paper, and I take a look at the list of contents. Then I look at the aims of the paper, which are usually in an early chapter. And of course, I spend most of my time reading through and analysing the main chapters of the paper in detail. That probably takes 80% of the time for assessing a paper. Then I read through the other sections before finally I review things such as the bibliography and other formal parts of the paper. And of course, lastly, I analyse the conclusion.
Werden das Literaturverzeichnis beispielsweise als die formalen Bestandteile nochmal genauer angeguckt und natürlich auch letztlich die Zusammenfassung dann nochmal analysiert.
Bachelorarbeiten sind für mich eine herausragende Arbeit im Leben eines Studierenden.
A final bachelor degree paper is, as far as I'm concerned, an extremely important piece of work in the life of a student. And so for me, to be attacked with extreme care, I probably take a different approach to other supervisors, one which is perhaps not so easy to understand at first. I work from the back of the paper to the front. That means I take a look at the conclusion and summary. And from this, I create my next questions, namely, how did this paper arrive at this conclusion? What methodology has been used? How has the market research been developed in empirical form, which has then led to this conclusion? Then I take a look at how well this has been structured in a clear and logical format, and I go back to the structure at the start. So, for me, working backwards from the end of the paper to the front is the method I prefer.
Nach vorne ist für mich der bevorzugte Modus.
Well, to start with, we have the assessment factors of subject knowledge and of method expertise. That means, what is the level of understanding about a complex field? How has it been investigated? How is the paper structured, and how is it all presented? And all of that, of course, involves using a specific method, and that shows the level of methodological competence. How do students use models? How do they use what they've learned, what they found in books? How do they apply all that to a practical situation? And how independently do they proceed? Are they able to gain new insights? Have they reflected carefully about the way they proceed? Have they thought about their work method? Have they used the relevant literature, and can they substantiate their work with this? And if all of those factors are brought together in a paper, that is when we supervisors are really pleased, and then we can award really good grades for papers.
Ja, die Prüfer sind ja
Well,
relativ frei.
final paper supervisors have quite a lot of leeway in how they assess work. So I recommend that bachelor students talk to the person who will examine their final paper and find out what criteria are important for them and how these criteria are weighted. I can give some personal examples of this. For me, one factor is to what extent have objectives set out in early chapters been made a subject of discussion in the paper. Another criteria is whether the paper is easy to read. Is there a clear theme running through the paper which is easy to follow? Another criteria is whether the conventional demands of academic papers have been fulfilled and to what extent have they been fulfilled. For example, the appropriate way of using relevant literature, giving the sources. And in my case, because most of my final papers are written in conjunction with companies, it's important to ascertain the degree of relevance and use for that company and to discuss these with representatives of the company.
Und mit den Unternehmensvertretern diskutiert.
Eine Bachelorarbeit wird von mir auf
When I assess a bachelor final paper, I work with two dimensions, so to speak. Firstly, I think about the formal aspects of academic work. That means things such as the style. Is it suitable for an academic paper? And I want to see how the author works with literature, naming sources, using appendices effectively. And I want to see that the citation conventions of the academic community have been adhered to. The second dimension I work with is how the content has been dealt with. That means how transparent, how comprehensible is the argumentation. Is it logical? Is the topic dealt with from only one perspective, or is it discussed with a critical eye? Is it clear that the student has grappled with a range of different things which affect the topic area of the paper? And lastly, academic writing must be objective and concise. That is also an important point in my view.
Wissenschaftssprache sollte sachlich und prägnant sein. Das ist mir ebenfalls noch wichtig.
At the beginning, the most important thing is that the student is really and truly passionate about their topic. Otherwise, they're not going to convince either the lecturer or the company they may be working with or anyone at all. So motivation is important. The willingness to dig really deep into the topic and to research more, and the curiosity, the inquisitiveness that the student shows for the topic. Academic work is about being curious, being inquisitive. That means having the desire to really tackle a topic, to look into it and research in more detail than usual. And I want students to get in touch when they're having problems. But then, on the other hand, that they ask for help in the right quantity. After all, the paper has to be their own work. I can't write it for them. It must be their own effort. And when it is, it can be a really enjoyable process. In 2 books, I've co-published papers from students because they were so good. And the students were delighted about that. They'd worked so hard on their papers that having them published was well-deserved recognition for their efforts. Well, in the past, it was a big help when students prepared carefully for the meetings they had with me as the supervisor of their papers. So, students need to make a note of all the questions that come up while they work on their paper and collect them in such a way that we can go through them systematically. It's important to remember that the person who's supervising the students' work is also the examiner, the assessor. So on the one hand, we're the person doing the evaluating, and on the other, we're the coach. So you can assume that we supervisors have a certain interest in the success of the students' work. What I would like to see from students is that it's clear that the student has grappled with the topic, is passionate about the topic, and that it's not just important for the student to get the best possible grade, but that they really want to develop their insights into the topic area. That, for me, is what the core of academic work is about. It's about the truth. It's about digging deep into a subject area and not just working on the surface. And it's about having a burning interest in the topic. That means that the student needs to look at a range of different perspectives about their topic. And that means working properly and accurately. I'm always delighted to see a presentation of a paper which proves that the student is really passionate about their topic. That's what I really enjoy in working with students, and that's what I have on my wish list for working with them.
Das, was mir am meisten Spaß macht in der Zusammenarbeit mit Studierenden, und das wünsche ich mir.